And if you, like me, after hearing this are wondering which version you have sitting on your shelf, I'll wait while you check. Hey everybody, welcome back to It's Too Late to Apologize Book Reviews. I'm Stella, and today we're going to be talking about Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus, was written by Mary Shelley and published in 1818, written in the first stages of the Industrial Revolution, and begun when Mary Shelley was just 18 years old. She wrote this at 18, people. Holy shit. Holy. This novel is gothic, horror, and cited as possibly being the first science fiction novel. But it is also considered a romantic work. I mean romantic with a capital R. And Britannica quantifies Romanticism as a movement that emphasized the individual, the subjective, the irrational, the imaginative, the personal, the spontaneous, the emotional, the visionary, and the transcendental. Romanticism can be seen as a rejection of the precepts of order, calm, harmony, balance, idealization, and rationality that typified classicism in general. It was also to some extent a reaction against Enlightenment and against 18th century rationalism and physical materialism in general, meaning science and logic. It was opposed to those things. But did you know there are two different versions of Frankenstein? There's the original and second publication, which are basically the same. And then there was a third edition that came out in 1831, which was extensively revised by Mary Shelley. And if you, like me, after hearing this are wondering which version you have sitting on your shelf, I'll wait while you check. I originally had the 1831 edited edition, and this is an Oxford printing of Frankenstein. But I couldn't help, after realizing that there's another version of Frankenstein, of picking up this new Penguin 1818 text edition of Frankenstein. And honestly, I really love this cover and first discovers his reflection in the pond when he's on his own. Now, the main differences between these two versions that I've read was that in the revised version, revised by Mary Shelley herself, a lot of the scientific discussion and references of the time are deleted. The epigraph was removed, but it was still included in this revised Oxford edition of mine. And the epigraph, while being only a few lines long, really illustrates perfectly the themes of this novel. Another change was that in the original story, Elizabeth was Victor's cousin. Instead of in the revised version, she was his adopted sister instead. And another one of the biggest changes was to Victor Frankenstein's motivations. In the first editions, the creation of the creature was much more of Victor's own decision. And in the 1931 revision, there is this sort of evil but natural compulsion that leads Frankenstein to birthing his creation. And he was almost powerless to stop himself. This being perhaps the hand of fate or the nature of man himself. This is a story, nested within a story, nested within another story. And each story has a similar plight at its core, the pursuit of knowledge. And in that pursuit, we find in each story something the protagonist finds worth dying for. Ah, knowledge, the forbidden fruit. Now, there's quite a bit of creation allegory in this story, but also of mythology and parenthood and technological advancement, which made this story so interesting to me and gave it so much depth. I really enjoyed this story. So it's a story within a story within a story. It's basically story inception, okay? It starts off as an epistolary account from Robert Walton, a man embarking upon an expedition to the North Pole. He is not well educated, but through finding some books in his uncle's library, he becomes obsessed in winning his glory through this voyage. When his ship becomes trapped in ice, he sees an oversized human form on a dog sled disappear into the snow. And the next day, he finds Victor Frankenstein, half frozen and almost dead, on the ice, and his men bring him on board. Frankenstein hears of Walton's ambition to travel to the North Pole, and he tries to warn him about seeking his glory by telling him of his own cautionary tale of woe. We then get the beginning of the second story, Victor Frankenstein's. He is a scientist who, after his mother dies, throws himself into his studies at school to work through his grief. He becomes obsessed with reanimating dead flesh through his experiments. He focuses only on his goal, ignoring his family and his fiancée, concentrating only on the glory and renown that he will gain when one day he succeeds in bringing his creation to life. Built from bodies of the dead, both human and animal, Victor creates his creature. And what gets me is that as Victor pieces together his creation, he makes him huge and powerful, but beautiful. And the second that life animates the creature's features, Victor suddenly then sees its hideousness. After years of school and 2 years of experimentation and research, Victor creates a miracle. He creates life, but the instant the miracle is bestowed is the moment Victor finds him ugly. And the superficiality in his reaction is baffling. And I wonder if it is a comment about the shallowness of Victor's personal aesthetic values and philosophy than in the actual presence of the biological miracle in front of him. And it's interesting that simply the creature's appearance is what is so repugnant, whereas Victor's weakness and character is the true ugly thing in the room. People who haven't read the novel think that Frankenstein is the creature. And there is some real situational irony to this misunderstanding, because knowledge is knowing that Frankenstein is not the monster, but wisdom is knowing that he is. Oh, irony. Now, if you don't want any spoilers to a 200-year-old novel, you should probably check out now, because we're about to get into it. Repulsed by his creation, Victor flees his laboratory and apartment, and upon returning to it the next day discovers the creature is gone. He then becomes ill from stress, and much later he receives a letter from his father telling him his youngest brother is dead and that a close friend is the suspect. Victor rushes home and catches a glimpse of the creature and knows it was he who did the crime. But the friend is found guilty and executed. Victor goes in search of his creation. I was troubled. A mist came over my eyes, and I felt a faintness seize me, but I was quickly restored by the cold gale of the mountains. I perceived, as the shape came nearer, sight tremendous and abhorred, that it was the wretch whom I had created. I trembled with rage and horror, resolving to wait his approach and then close with him in mortal combat. Mortal combat! I'm sorry, I can help it. It's what ran through my head when I first read it. And as he encounters the creature, the monster speaks and convinces Victor to listen to his story. And so now we get the third narrative, the creature's story. When the creature left Victor's laboratory, he took Victor's diary with him. He left the city, lived in the forest, and learned how to survive. He looked upon nature in this very pure, beautiful way. He was like a child discovering the world for the first time, which he was. The creature is articulate and intelligent and lonely, but finds beauty in the natural world. He comes across a family who he watches and learns language and to read by observing them. He also comes across some discarded books, a copy of Milton's Paradise Lost. And how perfect is that? He discovers the humanities by reading Paradise Lost from Milton, Lives by Plutarch, and Goethe's Sorrows of Werther. And through his own enlightenment, he discovers how monstrous his creation was. And it's here the epigraph hits us hard. Did I request thee, Maker, from my clay, to mold me, man? Did I solicit thee from darkness to promote me? And this is from Paradise Lost. No child is asked to be brought into this world, and to then be discarded? Oof. He wants so badly to befriend the family, to belong somewhere, and to be loved as he loves this family. But the family are afraid of him, and he is driven away and is alone again. He thinks to take revenge upon his creator, for he is so hideous that no one will love him. Even this good, willing family that he knew couldn't love him. And so he kills Victor's brother and frames the friend and tells Victor that if he doesn't make him a female companion, that he will kill everyone he loves. Oof. So that's what we get from the creature's side of the story. So back in Victor's perspective, he decides to build the creature a companion, but then changes his mind and destroys the creature before he finishes. Victor kills the creature's Eve. The creature then kills Victor's wife, who was Victor's Eve, and basically kills everyone else Victor loves. And Victor vows to kill the creature even if he should die in the process. He chases the creature up into the Arctic, and that is when he comes across Walton. And now we're back in Walton's epistolary narrative. Walton keeps Victor company before he dies. The monster sees his creator dead, and now feels truly alone, as the only person who understood him at all is now dead. And he says he will commit suicide and leaves the ship on an ice raft and is never seen from again. Now, we have a lot to talk about here. Shelley refers to nature, as many do, in the female sense. And so Victor violates nature with embarking upon making his creation. Victor says, with unrelaxed and breathless eagerness, I pursued nature to her hiding places. Yeah, dude's stalking nature. And this is the most eagerness Victor feels toward anything feminine in this entire novel. I often felt while reading it that he didn't really feel anything for Elizabeth because perhaps he always considered her his from the very beginning. He felt Elizabeth had been given to him by his father, his creator. Elizabeth was his Eve. And so when the creature asks Victor for a companion, Victor denies him in the end and even destroys her in front of him. God creates man in his own image, who is unlike any of the animals already made. Adam is lonely, and so God gives Adam Eve. Adam falls from grace by acquiring knowledge, the forbidden fruit, and is exiled from Eden. Victor is Adam, but in turn, so is the creature. But instead, the creature's creator turns his back and denies him everything, and only once expelled from his creator's presence does the creature find nature's splendor in Eden and acquire knowledge for himself through his own ingenuity. But he falls from the grace he was able to give himself through knowledge and peace in nature, the feminine, because of rejection and alienation. And the similarities to Paradise Lost in that Victor wanted to become God by creating life himself, by bypassing nature, bypassing the feminine to create life without woman, to forgo the limitations placed on man by God in an attempt to become God. And the creature turns against his own creator also. And what I find really interesting is that Mary Shelley lived and wrote during an age of religious instability, one that witnessed the spread of atheism, millenarianism, Methodism, Unitarianism, evangelicalism. There's a lot of isms in there. And I've read that some debate as to whether Mary Shelley herself was an atheist. And I find it really interesting thing to ponder, being that the creature was responsible for his creator's death, which made him entirely alone. He had felt completely alone before that, but it wasn't until Victor died that he realized, no, now I'm completely alone. Is this Mary Shelley saying, be careful of killing your God, for at the very least, he was someone you could hate. But now, without that, all one has to hate is themselves. Damn, Shelley. That's both dark and deep. The scientific questions that Mary Shelley poses in this novel were relevant to the time she wrote in, but are still relevant today. Artificial intelligence, genetically modified food, and stem cell research are highly debatable on the moral battlefield of today and fraught with expectation of the possible future applications of these technologies. But I don't think that Shelley is saying that science is evil, but how one handles his creation is what matters. All this suffering may have been avoided if Victor could have accepted his creation as he created him. He wanted the glory of God, but not the responsibility of God. And that is where the tragedy all came from, the shirking of responsibility. And while he regrets making the creature, I don't remember him regretting abandoning him at all. And that was the problem. He was still, in the end, blind to what the real problem was. He was a deadbeat dad who was horrified that his abandoned child turned into a monster. And he created that monster. If you want to be God, you better take the responsibility for it. Both Walton and Victor cloister themselves away from society and family to attempt to discover their potential and glory. But the creature wants nothing more than to belong, because for him, there is no point of living otherwise. Victor and the creature are the antithesis of one another in that sense, but they also have a lot in common. I could never really feel sorrow or sympathy for Victor because his endeavor always felt so selfish, and all I felt was compassion for the creature, for never having known kindness, for never even having a name. And yet he had a better understanding of what it meant to be human than his maker did. And who is mankind to pass such a harsh judgment on the hideousness of the creature, when our own origins are either of mutation to a degree that we resemble nothing else on the planet and cannot seem to coexist within the environmental limits that bore us, or as the creation of another master that formed us in his likeness, but who we revolted against in the pursuit of knowledge and jealousy of our Creator. And the creature only realizes his hideous form once regarding himself in a pool of water. And so the novel Frankenstein, and Frankenstein in general, shows us humanity, our own reflection, just as the creature found his own and was repulsed by it. Well done, Shelley. Well frickin' done. This novel continually asks, what does it mean to be human? Victor Frankenstein's creature repeats, and what was I? Of my own creation and creator, I was absolutely ignorant. I was not even of the same nature as man. When I looked around, I saw and heard of none like me. Was I then a monster, a blot upon the earth, from which all men fled and whom all men disowned? What was I? The question again reoccurred, to be answered only with groans. And what is man, if compared to the rest of the animal kingdom? Not like anything else. This novel is just rife with themes of alienation, mental health, and suicide. All three men talk about accomplishing and receiving what one deserves. But how does one accurately know what one deserves? That is entitlement. Why does one believe themselves to be so special, to deserve anything? Is man inherently good or evil? And if he is evil, then who is to blame? The creature or the creator? Is it man's destiny to push the laws of nature for discovery? Or is it man's hubris? And if it is hubris, then why does man want to push if it is against nature to do so? Was he created that way? And what does that say about the creator of man, to form something so against the laws of nature itself? Oof, the existentialism goes deep. I really feel that this is a novel that I'm going to reread several times. And every time I reread it, I'm going to find something new to dissect and digest and mull over, because there was so much going on in this novel and it was so good. I really enjoyed reading Frankenstein. But have you read Frankenstein? What did you think? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Is it living up to the hype that I'm giving it? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like and subscribe so that more people can find some great books. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye. That one went fast.